Have you ever had a client do some pushback or even, like test your boundaries in your program? Sooner or later it's going to happen to you. You're just going to have a difficult client. But now the question is, how do you deal with this difficult client? And as your coach today, Kirk Duncan as your coach, I'm going to show you what to do so you can hopefully eliminate this ever happening of having a difficult client. But if you do have a difficult client, how to deal with this so it's just like baking cookies. It's really easy. There's a recipe to this. There's a formula to this so that you can work your way through a difficult client and not quit your coaching career. All right, super cool. So before I move on, make sure that you subscribe and also make sure that you click the bell so you get notification of every time I upload a video so you don't miss anything. And of course, make sure you stay here, watch all the videos that I have for you so that you can learn a lot from me over my 18 years of experience and save you a ton of time and a ton of money when it comes to quality coaching as an empath. Okay, cool. So let's talk about this. So there's 3 areas that I look at when I'm coaching new clients on how to set themselves up so that they have a structure so that difficult clients don't even really show up. Because really, when you think about this, the more structured you are, the less you're going to have difficult clients because they just won't fit into your system. So I have these 3 different parts I want to cover with you. I wrote them down and I'm going to keep checking my list here because over the last 18 years, there's been a lot that I've learned, but I want to make sure you get right down to exactly what to do. So number 1 is first to create a client description. Now it sounds kind of crazy because you think, oh, I want to just coach everyone. That's very heartwarming and very noble of you wanting to coach everybody, but realistically you don't, because there are some people who are just not ready for coaching. And there are some people who are still in the blame and complaining zone that would just be really tough to coach because anything that goes wrong, they're just going to blame you. So truthfully, you actually don't want to coach everybody. So what you want to do is you want to create a client description. Now, first, make up a list of who you want to work with and why. Who do you want to work with? Now, don't say everybody, narrow it down a little bit more, who you want to work with and why. And then also, I want you to make a list of who you don't want to work with and why. Now, it sounds crazy, like, no, I would just want to help everybody. Like I said, do you want to coach jerks? Do you want to coach people who are super rude? Do you want to coach people who are just going to just completely destroy the coaching appointment and are reckless? No, you don't. Now it seems like, oh, Kirk, I don't need to write this down of who I don't want to work with. I mean, that's obvious. Actually, it's not. One of the big problems I see when coaches are trying to establish their coaching business is that they didn't take time to create a client description. And so in their head, they're not clear about who to look for and who to avoid. And so when I meet client coaches who are struggling, I find that they have clients that are difficult and they don't know how they attracted difficult clients. And I tell them right off the bat, do you have a client description? And if so, let's look at it. Let's see who you want to work with and who you don't want to work with. And guess what? 9 out of 10 coaches I work with don't have a client description. Now, I went through the same problem. I started to attract people that were difficult to work with, who wouldn't do their action steps, wouldn't follow through with their work, would put things off, would be late to their appointments. And the first part is you want to have this client description. And in this client description, there's 2 sides. What kind of person do you want to work with and what kind of person do you not want to work with? Now, I highly suggest that this client description is reviewed, meaning read it to yourself, read over it every single week. Now, clients I coach, I tell them, read that client description every day. That way you're pre-programming your mind for who you're looking for and who you're not looking for. Sure makes it a lot easier to find the kind of client you really want when your mind knows what it's looking for. So client description is huge in this whole development of who you're attracting to you, because what you think about, you bring about. And if you have no clear description, your mind is going to pick anybody to be a client, and you're going to set yourself up for a difficult client. Okay, number 2, you need to have an agreement. This is an agreement that your client signs to work with you. And inside this agreement, I have a few things Now, it's kind of a long list, so hang in there as I go through this long list with you. So in this agreement, you want to include what will happen if you're late, what will happen if you miss an appointment, are there refunds, and if so, how does that work, or are there no refunds? Do you have the right as a coach to cancel at any time? Number 5, you are going to write down what the coaching program includes, what does it not include, and then also, are there any other rules of engagement for the program? What topics will you talk about, and what topics will you not talk about? And then number 9, that each appointment is going to be audio recorded for your own record, just so that the client knows that everything will be recorded. Now, these are the 9 different parts of an agreement that I find to be very valuable in putting together in a client agreement. Now, it doesn't have to necessarily be in that order. You may want to start out with what your program includes and what does it not include, and then go through the rest of those other 7 items. What does it include? What does it not include for your coaching program? And then the other 7. That probably would be a better order than the way I first started, but I just want to make sure you have all 9 of these inside your agreement. The reason why is, let's just cover the number 1 that I said. What if they're late to an appointment? What happens? Well, if they're 15 minutes late to a 1-hour appointment, they only have 45 minutes late. So if they're late, they miss their time. That's what you have to describe to them. Or they're going to assume when they're late, they still get 1 hour because they paid you. So you have to write these things down so that they know you have structure when it comes to your coaching business. Now, this is another reason why people have difficult clients, because they lack structure, they lack rules, they lack safety for you as a coach. Okay, number 2, missed appointments. They're going to assume that if they just don't show up, they still have the appointment. How do you want it to be? Do they actually lose the appointment if they don't show up? That's something you need to decide and be able to put in this agreement. And then, do you have the right to cancel? I think it's important for you as a coach to know that you can get out of that coaching agreement with that person at any time based upon behavior or maybe some of the ways they treated you or your team, but that you can cancel the agreement. And if so, what do you do with the money? Do you give it back to them? Do you donate to charity? Or do you just keep it? That's something you're going to have to decide. Okay, and then the topics. Very interesting that I would say that, what topics do you talk about and what topics do you not talk about? It doesn't seem like that big of a deal until a client brings up a conversation or a topic you don't even want to go into. So now, because you didn't decide ahead of time what topics you want to talk about and what topics you don't want to talk about, now you're in a difficult situation with this client. And now you're going to have to deal with it in the moment. So over my 18 years of learning how to deal with difficult clients, I have learned that you have to decide ahead of time what you will talk about and what you will not talk about. And that you put in the agreement so they know up front before they even get into the coaching with you what it all involves. And number 9, I include that every session's going to be recorded. I do not record it for them. I record it for my own safety. Meaning that if there is a recorder that's on the desk, or I'm doing a video conferencing and it's being recorded, they know it's being recorded. And I let them know, it's like, hey, this is being recorded. Now, if they want a recording, they have to record themselves. I'm not going to always be giving them recordings and taking care of that way. They have to do the recording themselves if they want their own recording. But when there's a recording that's on, it causes them to think about what it is they're about ready to say. And if a client ever asks you to turn off the recorder because they have something they want to tell you, do not turn off that recorder. Because once you turn that recorder off, whatever they say, whatever you say, can be misconstrued about what actually was said. Because I record every session, it keeps my clients in good behavior. I had a client one time tell me, oh, I want you to turn this off. And I said, no, I will not turn the recorder off. And they're like, but I have something I want to tell you. I go, I don't care. I'm not going to turn it off. And so they decided not to tell me. And so it's good. It's like, I didn't need to hear whatever they're going to say. Because years ago, I didn't do recordings. And there's conversations I wish I would never have heard. I didn't want to hear that stuff. I didn't need to hear that stuff. I am not a dumping ground. I'm not a coach that somebody can just say whatever they want to and just get away with it. That's why I decided to record every session. So I keep those recordings for about 6 months. And then after that, I delete them. But I keep those recordings just to be safe about whatever's being said in the experience. Okay, so that's agreement. And this is a written agreement, or you can turn it into a digital agreement. And then you have the client read through it and sign it before you hold your first coaching appointment. appointments. That way, they've agreed to a particular structure. Now, during the coaching sessions, if they cross the line on any of these points in the agreement, you can bring it up because now you have structure. Now you have some safety guidelines. And so now you have something to protect you, because sometimes clients act out. Sometimes they push back. Sometimes they have difficulties and they want to make you the problem. This is the beginning of you helping cut down the difficulties between you and clients, because number one, you have a client description. Number two, you have an agreement that they've signed and agreed to. Okay, now number three, it's super important that when you and the client are coming up with the action steps or the to-do list between this appointment and the next appointment, that you write down or they send you their list of action steps. It's called the performance tracking. And it's also important that each time you have a session with the client to follow up on those action steps. And when they don't do their action steps, you ask them, why didn't you do your action step? Now, the reason why you're pointing at them and asking, why didn't you do the step, or what came up or what got in your way to do your action step, is so that they are practicing taking responsibility for not doing the work. If you don't clarify this each session about what they did do and what they didn't do with their action steps from the last session, sooner or later, if you don't do it, sooner or later, they're going to blame you for their lack of progress. So if you don't help them see that they didn't do their action or whatever the obstacle, sabotage, or excuse was, if you don't help them on a regular basis take accountability and be responsible for their action steps and their own progress, you will be blamed for their lack of progress. Now, how do I know this? I mean, after 18 years of coaching, my first 2 years were really difficult because I did not follow up on action steps. I did not follow up on their promises. And then towards the end of the program, they blamed me for their lack of progress. And when I tried to bring up the fact that they didn't do their action step, they still said, well, I paid you and I didn't get my results. And I kept trying to tell them, you didn't do your action steps, but it was too late. They completely thought it was my fault, my problem for them not getting their goal. And I realized this is because I'm not following up on a regular basis in every appointment what they did do and what they didn't do, and then asking them, why did you not do your action step? What got in your way? What came up? What stopped you? And to help them see that they are the ones responsible for the results. So super important to track those action steps, follow up on those action steps, and then find out from them what got in the way. Now, during each session, when it comes to tracking in this third part, if they do any type of blame or excuses or complaining or anything where they are pushing off the responsibility or pushing off the accountability of their own actions, if I were you, I would take notes. And I would take those notes in each one of those sessions so that you have proof to yourself what kind of excuses they've used, what kind of blame they've used, what kind of complaining they've used. That way, it is less of a chance you're going to get blamed for it. I know it seems like everybody should be nice and responsible and accountable, but they're not. When people are under pressure and they're trying to move forward and they can't move forward very fast, they tend to turn around and blame everybody around them. And it doesn't have to be you. Okay, so 3 things. Number 1, client description. Number 2, the agreement. And number 3, the performance tracking. Super good. 3 very important things so you can learn how to deal with difficult clients. Now, in the case, if you're in a session and a client starts to act up, what do you do? Well, first of all, don't sit there and take it. First thing you need to do is speak up and say, hey, based upon our agreement, we don't talk this way, or we don't talk about this topic, or I'm not okay with what's being said. You have to speak up for yourself, because just because they paid you and just because you're their coach doesn't mean you get to be abused or talked down or belittled or blamed for things that are going on. Now, if you do need to own up for something, of course, own up to it. But in the moment, you got to hold your ground, because people have a tendency to push back on those who are supporting them. I don't know why it happens, but it's just unfortunate it happens. But when they do push back, I stand up for myself and go, hey, I know this is tough, but you do need to, continue to take responsibility for where you're at. And I get this is difficult, but I'm not the one to blame. I'm not the one to push on. But keep that clear. And because you have a client description, which sorts people out, because you have an agreement, and because you've been tracking performance results, you're gonna have less of those moments happen. But if they do happen, stand up for yourself, hold to the ground that you've established and the structure you've established. And just know they're going through difficult times. But it's not okay for people to trash on you. It's not okay for people to talk down to you or your team in any way possible. And if they continue that behavior, you got to give them a warning. Hey, this is a warning. Don't treat me this way. Don't treat my team this way. And just so you know, if there's a second time, I'm dropping this agreement. You don't have to take and be in a situation like that and have to deal with it. But I find those are a lot less now that I have a client description and an agreement and I do performance tracking. It has really reduced the number of problems about how to deal with difficult clients because I did a great structure up front, and that's what you want to do, is set up the structure so it weeds out and keeps out those difficult people to work with. Because coaching is awesome. It's life-changing, it's exhilarating, it's challenging, it stretches you, but it really gets into the human soul and causes change. And so the more structure you put together like these three that I just shared with you, you'll find that you'll love coaching a lot more because you're working with the kind of people you've always wanted to work with. So put this into practice, do this work, be sure to get on this as soon as possible so you can enjoy coaching at the next level. Okay, I'll see you on the next video, and stay tuned because everything I have for you is to help you become an awesome coach.